One day, as I stepped outside to hang the laundry, I noticed that the sky had taken on a distinctly autumnal appearance. Thinking to myself that it might be another hot day, I glanced over towards the guest house. On the same property as my house, there's a guest house where my son Kevin, his wife Helen, and their son Eric live. Whenever Helen comes over to our house, she takes household items like toilet paper, detergent, and shampoo, and she also seems to be secretly taking money from my wallet. However, since I haven't caught her in the act, I have no proof and can't confront her about it. Our living expenses kept dwindling, so I decided to take on a part-time job. Of course, I tried talking to Kevin about what Helen was doing, but he wouldn't listen to me. So, we decided to have a discussion with my husband Paul, who comes home once a month from his job in another city, along with Kevin and Eric. Helen was supposed to join us later. I told you that money has been disappearing from my wallet, and that's not the only thing. Are you saying Helen did it? You must be joking. Paul then quietly placed his smartphone on the table, showing a video. It was footage from the security camera we had installed in our house. The video showed Helen in a bright corner of our living room, finding my wallet in my bag, taking out several bills, and then putting the wallet back into the bag. Kevin was stunned. But I've been giving her enough money for our expenses. Why? Even after all this, you still don't get it? My words hit Kevin hard. He stormed out of the house, ran to the guest house, and dragged Helen back. Helen turned pale as she watched the video. My name is Rebecca, a 60-year-old housewife. My husband Paul works in another city and comes home about once a month. We're both past the midpoint of our lives and would like to live peacefully, but it seems that's not possible. When Paul found out he had to work away from home, he confided in me with a slightly disappointed look. Rebecca, I've been assigned to a new post, so I'll be living alone from next month. They've asked me to oversee the new branch and take care of the staff there. Paul has always been a caring big brother figure at his company, and everyone looked up to him. He's not just supportive at work but also at home. When Kevin was a newborn, Paul took the initiative to help with feeding and changing diapers. Even though he couldn't take parental leave, he spent weekends and summer holidays napping with Kevin, taking him to the park, and teaching him as he grew older. Seeing Paul unusually downcast was rare. Don't be so upset. You'll be back soon, right? I assumed he would be back in 2 to 3 months. Well, I'm not sure how long it'll be. I'll be working in another state, so I won't be able to see you often. I'll only be able to come home about once a month, and I'm worried about you. Why is he worried about me? I thought for a moment and then realized. I had a chronic illness and had just undergone surgery recently, so he was worried that something might happen to me. Don't worry. Kevin and his family are in the guest house, and I'll contact you if anything happens. On the same property as my house, there's an annex where Kevin, his wife Helen, and their son Eric live. Kevin got married 6 years ago and lived in an apartment for a couple of years, but due to the landlord's circumstances, they had to move out. They searched for other places, but Helen refused to accept any of them, eventually coming to ask if they could live with us. Paul was not keen on the idea and initially opposed it. Kevin, you know Rebecca has a chronic illness. I don't want to burden her too much, so I'm against it. We turned him down once, but when less than a month remained before they had to leave, Kevin came back looking quite desperate. Dad, please, we won't cause any trouble. Just let us live in the guest house. By the time this request came, Paul had changed his mind and agreed to let Kevin's family stay in the guest house. When I asked him why later, he said it was because he felt more secure knowing I wouldn't be alone. It's been about 3 years since then, and they show no sign of moving out, still living in the guest house. Not wanting to worry Paul, I tried to sound cheerful. Don't worry. I'm recovering well after the surgery, and I'm taking my medication properly. We should install a monitoring camera. The newer models are quite advanced, with temperature sensors to help prevent heat stroke and other features. You're worrying too much. I laughed, and we talked into the night. Later, Paul actually installed a monitoring camera and linked it to an app on his smartphone. I was surprised, but since it was placed high up, it didn't bother me, and I quickly got used to it. A week later, Paul left with a heavy heart, and now I live alone in a house that feels too spacious. However, I had something on my mind that I hadn't told Paul. It was about Kevin's wife, Helen. Even though she was supposed to be a housewife, she often left Eric at home and went out somewhere. I could understand going out for lunch with friends occasionally, but this happened quite frequently. Also, whenever she came over with Eric, she always took something from our house, which troubled me. Rebecca, I'm taking some toilet paper. At first, it was just small things like that, so I didn't mind much. But it gradually escalated to items like detergent, shampoo, body soap, and even, on one occasion, plates. Though she returned the plates, it was still strange. Helen, are you struggling so much financially that you can't afford to buy these things? Huh? No, that's not it. Then why are you taking things from the house? I'm just trying to save money. With Eric around, we'll need a lot of money in the future, so I'm trying to save up now. So Rebecca, please think of it as helping out and overlook it. She said this nonchalantly, waving her hand as she left again. She always dressed fashionably, talked about going to the spa, and had her nails done. Was she really saving money? Kevin worked from early morning until late at night, and I hadn't heard of any financial difficulties. I wanted to confront her about her intentions, but I didn't want to be the meddling mother-in-law, so I stayed silent. During these days, my wallet started to mysteriously run out of money. I suspected Helen, but I had no proof. Since the money was taken without me noticing, I couldn't catch her in the act, and time just kept passing by. One day, I went outside to hang the laundry and saw that the sky had taken on the appearance of autumn. I thought it would be another hot day despite the lingering summer heat and glanced towards the guest house. Even after this, I never once saw Helen taking money. I wondered if it wasn't her after all, but I started hearing unfavorable rumors about Helen from various neighbors. They said they saw her dressed like she was going to a club or walking around with young men. I was skeptical. I knew she liked to dress fashionably, but I had only seen her in outfits you'd see in fashion magazines, and she didn't seem like the type to cheat. When she was at the guest house, she sometimes wore pajamas, so I couldn't imagine her partying around. However, the fact that people had seen her suggested that there might be a side of Helen I didn't know. Even as I kept an eye on things, my wallet continued to lose money. Running out of living expenses, I decided to get a part-time job until I could find proof. I told Paul it was for a change of pace, but he was very worried. I managed to get his approval on the condition that I wouldn't overdo it. Fortunately, I saw that the nearby supermarket was hiring part-time cashiers, so I contacted them and went for an interview. I had also consulted with Kevin just in case, and on the day before my first shift, I told him, "Kevin, I'm going to start working part-time next week." "Why?" "You just got out of the hospital and must still be exhausted. It's only 3 days a week, so I'll be fine. Besides, about Helen." I decided to talk to Kevin about Helen's behavior, hoping he might say something to her and we could make some progress. "What about Helen?" "Actually, she's been taking things like toilet paper and shampoo from our house recently. Is your household struggling financially?" Kevin was indignant. "No way. I provide money every month, and Helen handles the finances. She used to work in accounting, so she's good at managing our finances. Is that so? But it's true she's been taking things. Also, money from my wallet. Money? Are you saying Helen's been taking that too? Kevin looked skeptical. Yes. Money has been disappearing little by little from my wallet. She probably thinks I haven't noticed, but if this continues, it's going to be a problem. Could you talk to her about it? Mom, are you losing it? There's no way that's happening. Kevin sighed deeply and didn't believe me, no matter what I said. The next day, I told Helen that I was going to start working part-time and that I wouldn't be able to watch Eric as often. This happened just as Helen came over to leave Eric with me. Helen frowned and complained. What? Then who's going to look after Eric? Helen, let me be clear. You need to take care of your own child. Why do you always leave Eric with me and go off somewhere? Where do you go? I spoke firmly, and Helen glared at me, annoyed. Fine, I understand. I won't ask you anymore. Without answering my question, she took Eric's hand and went back into the guest house. I felt a cold sweat down my back from the tension, but from that day on, only Eric would come over. Granny, play with me. I thought to myself, Helen's out again, and invited Eric inside, taking care of him. I hoped that starting my part-time job would make Helen reconsider her actions. With that faint hope, I spent the week. The first day of my part-time job arrived, and my shift started from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Having been a housewife for so long, I was nervous about working again. Although being a cashier seemed simple, there was a lot to learn and do. I clutched my notepad and pen and received training from a young employee. She was in her 20s, much more capable than I was, and she quickly explained how to handle point cards and operate the self-checkout. Her name tag had a gold badge that said, Customer Service Expert, and her demonstration of how to handle the register was excellent. I need to make sure I remember this. I reminded myself as I headed home and approached the gate. As I searched my bag for the house key, I saw Eric standing in front of the house. I was puzzled and quietly approached him. Not realizing my previous thoughts had vanished, I called out to him. Eric? What are you doing here? Hearing his name, Eric looked up, his eyes brimming with tears and his nose running as he stood there crying. I was startled and quickly took a tissue from my bag to wipe his tears and nose. What's wrong? Did something sad happen? He told me that he had been waiting here for me to come out all day. When I didn't come out, he asked his mother Helen, who told him that Granny had gone to work and wasn't home, which shocked him and made him cry. Why did Granny have to leave? Is it because of my work that I can't play with Granny anymore? Eric said, sniffling and trying his best to explain. Work? What work do you have? I asked. Eric replied, This, and handed me a piece of paper. I unfolded the paper, which was folded into quarters, and saw Helen's handwriting. Eric's job. Transfer money from Granny's wallet to Mom's wallet once a day. I was stunned by this instruction. What? I looked back and forth between the note and Eric's face, and in a trembling voice, I asked Eric, Eric, did Mom tell you to do this? Then, Eric answered, Yeah. Mom said it's my job and gave me this paper. My face tensed up, but I invited Eric inside and gave him some juice. He drank it happily, but I was in shock. I couldn't believe that Helen had instructed such a small child to steal money. Could this really be happening? I wasn't sure. How could this have happened without me noticing? I've always been with Eric, and at 5 years old, he shouldn't have had many opportunities to take money from my wallet. We were together from morning till night, so how did he manage to steal money? Suddenly, an idea came to my mind. That night, I called Paul and explained the situation. Okay, I understand. I'm not doubting Eric, but I'll review the footage from the monitoring camera. Paul listened carefully and said he'd check. 3 days later, Paul contacted me. Rebecca? I found something alarming. What? My heart skipped a beat. It turned out that Eric was indeed the culprit, but even more shocking was that the footage showed Helen instructing Eric on how to take money from my wallet. She wasn't aware of the monitoring camera, but even so, to steal money in broad daylight was unthinkable. I was planning to come back this weekend. This is wrong. We need to talk to Kevin and Helen. Yes, we do. I felt a heavy weight in my chest, but now that we knew the truth, we had to confront them and resolve this issue. The few days leading up to the weekend were filled with a dark cloud, but working part-time helped me focus on my tasks and temporarily forget the situation. The weekend arrived with a forecast predicting a direct hit from a hurricane, but fortunately, it veered west, leaving our area clear and sunny. However, despite the bright weather, a dark cloud hung over our household. Paul, intending to address the recent issue, left work 2 hours earlier than usual and drove home. He appeared slightly fatigued but also radiated a palpable anger, signaling that today might turn contentious. Upon arriving, Paul immediately walked over to the guest house and instructed Kevin and Helen to come to the main house urgently. However, only Kevin and Eric showed up. In the living room, Paul and I sat on one side of the table, facing Kevin and Eric on the other. Paul began. Kevin, where is Helen? I told her to come as well. She said she'd come later. Kevin's response was hesitant, likely due to the tense atmosphere. The clinking of ice in a glass on the table seemed to mock the silence. Well, I wanted to talk to her, specifically, but fine. Kevin, I've heard that Helen has been taking things from this house. Kevin looked shocked. Mom mentioned something like that before, but it's not like it happens often. Besides, Helen said she got those things from you, Mom. She says I gave them to her, but I didn't do so willingly. She insisted on taking things, saying she needed to save for Eric's future. Helen wouldn't do something like that. And about the money missing from my wallet, too. You can't be serious. Are you saying Helen has been stealing money? That's absurd. Paul then quietly placed his smartphone on the table and displayed the screen. This isn't a joke. We have footage showing Helen instructing Eric to take money and Eric actually doing it, all recorded on the monitoring camera I set up to watch over Rebecca due to her illness. Kevin was stunned as he watched the footage. In the video, Helen could be seen rummaging through a bag in a bright corner of the living room, finding a wallet, taking out several bills, and then putting the wallet back in the bag. She showed the money to Eric, crouched down to talk to him, and explained that he should take this much money from Granny's wallet. Eric nodded vigorously, saying he understood, and Helen hugged him tightly. Kevin stared at the screen, speechless. Paul continued. These recordings are from the camera I installed to monitor Rebecca. I never imagined it would capture something like this. We also have footage of Eric taking money from the wallet. Paul operates his smartphone and shows a different video. Eric didn't know when the money had been taken, but after watching this video, he finally understood. When I stood up to take my medication for my chronic condition, Eric had rummaged through my bag and quickly taken money from my wallet. Since the time for taking medicine was fixed, even young Eric could easily figure out the timing. How could this be? I trusted her. It's despicable to involve an innocent child in wrongdoing. You should be ashamed. Paul, who usually doesn't get angry, said this with a voice full of rage at that moment. Kevin flinched, and Eric was also flustered by this stern attitude. But I should have given you enough money for living expenses, so why? Why did you do this, Eric? Eric answered. Mom says her job is to give money to men, and she doesn't have enough. To men? Yes. Mom always puts on pretty makeup and goes out somewhere, but I'm not allowed to go with her. So I stay at home with Granny. Kevin looked at Eric suspiciously. His face showed confusion, as if saying, I don't understand what's going on. Could she be having an affair? Do you still not understand? I said, prompting Kevin to rush out of the house in a fury. He stormed to the guest house and dragged Helen back with him, causing a commotion. Ouch! Let go of me! Helen screamed as Eric watched, on the verge of tears, unsure of what was happening. Helen, what is going on? Explain yourself. Why did you steal money from Mom's wallet and even make Eric do it when I've given you enough for living expenses? Kevin demanded. Helen, startled, looked at Kevin, bewildered that he knew. What are you talking about? Do you have any proof that I did such a thing? Thinking there was no evidence, Helen spoke confidently. Kevin, however, pointed to Paul's smartphone on the table. This is the proof. You had Eric do it too. Where were you going when you left Eric with Rebecca? Were you cheating with another man? Helen's face turned pale as she saw the screen. Realizing she was caught, she fell to her knees and confessed, admitting she had been frequenting a male strip club, not having an affair. I'm sorry. At first, it was just for fun. Being stuck with Eric all day and the stress of having Rebecca living so close, I wanted to go out just once. But once turned into twice, then 3 times, and she got increasingly hooked. I just wanted to have some fun too. For that, I needed money. I wanted to spend money on those men. I couldn't work because I had to take care of Eric, and the allowance you gave me wasn't enough. That doesn't justify stealing from Mom's wallet. That's theft. I'm sorry. I won't go anymore. I'll never go to that club again. I'll return all the money I took. Please forgive me. Helen pleaded with Kevin through tears, but Kevin, filled with rage, was unmoved. No. Absolutely not. We're getting a divorce. No. She continued to cry and cling to him, but Kevin stood firm and later filed for divorce. I kept a record of the money that was taken, and I handed Helen a bill. What? This much? She seemed surprised, but couldn't deny it. She tried to negotiate for a lower amount, but I refused to budge and demanded the full amount. Helen, you should be grateful I'm not filing a police report. Repeated theft, even by a family member, would lead to your immediate arrest. Upon hearing this, Helen fell silent, bit her lip, and left. Kevin, in the process of divorcing her, also filed a claim for damages. A colleague at his workplace who had recently divorced recommended a good lawyer. Thus, Helen had to repay not only me but also pay damages to Kevin. Astonishingly, even in such circumstances, she couldn't stop going to male strip clubs, and there were rumors she had accumulated $20,000 to $30,000 in debt. I couldn't understand what drove her to such extremes, but it seemed only a matter of time before she couldn't manage her finances due to excessive payments. As for me, since I no longer needed to work part-time, I quit the supermarket and spent my days relaxing at home. No one lived in the guest house anymore, but instead, Kevin and Eric moved to the second floor of the main house. Kevin gained custody of Eric and took him in. While Kevin was at work during the day, I continued to look after Eric, but I no longer worried about money being stolen. Eric would be old enough to start preschool next year. I wonder if Kevin has already completed the paperwork. I should ask him. I murmured to myself while making pancakes for lunch. Just then, Paul came home. Today was the day he returned from his solo assignment. I hadn't seen Paul in weeks since that day, but he entered the living room looking unusually cheerful and happy. "I'm home." "Welcome back. Lunch is ready." "Welcome back, Grandpa." From now on, the four of us, Paul, Kevin, Eric, and I, would live together. I truly felt blessed with such a peaceful life. Although the summer heat still lingers, the season is about to change to autumn, and Paul, still putting all his effort into playing with the child, suggests, "How about we go apple picking during the next holiday?" Smiling at his enthusiasm and thinking he should consider his age, I went back to making another batch of pancakes for him. I got pregnant with Richard's child. "What?" "So please divorce him and leave. Please." "What are you saying out of the blue?" "Please." My sister Sophia dropped this bombshell, then went on to demand a divorce. The shock of her being pregnant was one thing, but I never expected her to plead for a divorce. But if she thought I knew nothing, she was gravely mistaken. At this point, an idea struck me. "If you want the divorce so badly, I have conditions." "Conditions?" "They can't be that bad, so fine." "Really?" I taunted my sister. Sophia, ever the competitive one, showed a confident attitude. Just as I had planned. "This won't be easy, you know." However, Sophia didn't realize. This condition would be a burden she'd carry for a lifetime. I took a deep breath, looked her straight in the eyes, and said firmly, "Divorce is fine, but you'll have to take care of the 3 daughters I've raised." "I don't get it. Why should I?" "They're your kids, right?" "Technically, I'm not their biological mother. They're stepchildren." "That's not it." "Because those 3 kids." I knew the truth Richard and Sophia had been hiding all this time. Thinking about how I've raised these 3 daughters, the emotions surged. Given how things had turned out, Sophia would have to atone for all her sins. I was filled with an unprecedented level of hatred. "Don't say something so random." "Should I show you the evidence then?" "Show me." And thus, Sophia stepped into her own personal hell. My name is Isabella, a 43-year-old housewife. I met my husband, Richard, at our previous workplace. We were the same age and joined the company at the same time. "I want to talk to you about something, so can we go out for a drink?" "If you're paying." "Again?" "Fine. You owe me for all the help I give you." Initially, we were just colleagues and friends. I even gave Richard advice on his love life. When Richard went through a breakup, our bond deepened quickly. "I'll help you next time." "What are you saying?" "I did it because I wanted to, don't worry." Oh, by the way. At that time, I didn't have romantic feelings, but seeing Richard heartbroken, I realized I loved him. I acted quickly after that. Feeling a bit guilty, I confessed my feelings to Richard. It worked out, and we started dating. Time passed, and we married in our 2nd summer together. "Let's make this work." "Yeah, let's build a great family." "Yes." "It might be early, but I want 2 kids." Our relationship was strong, and I wasn't too worried about starting a new life. But I never imagined my family would interfere. The cause was my sister, Sophia. "What?" "It's no big deal. Give it to me." "It's not fair for Isabella to have it." "Not fair? I bought this myself. You can get your own." As my sister, it's natural for you to give it to me." Saying this, Sophia would take my newly bought cosmetics without permission. Inviting Sophia to our new house was clearly a mistake. Sophia always wanted everything I had, even from childhood. This never changed, even as we grew up. "Hold on a second. See you, Isabella. Next time, be careful not to lose something even more important." "What do you mean?" "Well, why don't you figure it out yourself?" Even though we've known each other since we were kids, I've only ever scolded her. Annoying as she is still my sister by blood. And such lenient thoughts would lead to an irreversible situation. "You did it." "Yeah. We'll have a new family member soon, so we need to work harder." For years after we got married, we had our first child. Because of this, I resigned and became a housewife. However, 6 months later, something devastating happened. I had been suffering from stomach pain since the morning, and it was so bad that I called an ambulance. "What does that mean?" "I'm sorry, but you've had a miscarriage." "No way!" We did everything we could. I couldn't think of anything. I didn't even know how I got home. I couldn't figure out how to tell Richard. "I'm home." "Oh, welcome back." "What's with that face?" Yeah." Richard must have sensed my distress because he gently asked, "Take your time and tell me, okay?" His words made me feel safe, and I burst into tears, explaining what had happened today. Richard was shocked, but he told me it wasn't my fault. "It'll be all right." "Thank you." "Let's just take it easy for now." After some time, we started trying for a baby again, but I still couldn't get pregnant. Further hospital tests revealed that I had a condition that made it difficult to conceive and prone to miscarriages. It felt like I was sinking deeper into a pit of despair. To make matters worse, a troublesome person started visiting frequently. "I'm sorry about your loss, Isabella." "Yeah. But don't worry, it's not the end yet." "I hope so. And, actually, I need to ask you a favor." Sophia never hesitates to ask me for things. Even though she knows my current situation, she doesn't care. Her seemingly concerned words are empty. "So, what's the favor?" "Oh, can you lend me some money?" "What?" "I'm in a bit of trouble, just a little will do." I thought it was too much trouble, so I handed her the $300 in my wallet. "Well, this should do. By the way, where's Richard?" "He went out to meet a friend." "Okay. Thanks. See you." With that, Sophia left. After this, she stopped coming to our house. Peaceful days followed. Then, Richard made a proposal. I was thinking, how about we adopt a child? "Adopt?" I was stunned by his sudden suggestion. Although we hadn't had a child, it didn't mean it was completely impossible. I think it might be better than betting on such a low chance. "You might be right." "Of course, we don't have to do it right away, but I'd like you to think about it." "Oh, okay." I was very conflicted. I understood Richard's point, but I still couldn't give up on having our own child. In the end, I spent about a month thinking it through. I waited for Richard to come home and shared my thoughts about adopting a child. "What do you think?" I thought about it, and maybe you're right. Even if there's no blood connection, the child will still be ours. Yeah, you're right. And I'll take care of all the paperwork. Really? Thank you. Richard's eyes were filled with hope. Thus, Richard and I adopted a child. Her name was Emily, about 2 years old, and she was a very understanding and good child. Around the same time, Sophia started visiting us again. I had no idea where she had been or what she had been doing, but it seemed she was back to asking for things and money again. You adopted a child, didn't you? Since you couldn't have one of your own, it worked out well, right? Yes. But how do you know about that? Sophia looked uneasy. Huh? Oh, I just happened to run into Richard the other day, and he mentioned it. Sophia was fiddling with her earlobe, not looking at me at all. I knew. This was how Sophia acted when she was lying. Really? Where did you meet him? Where was it again? I'll ask Richard about it later then. Does it even matter? She clearly tried to change the subject. Her desperation made me think she had been in touch with Richard for a long time. Oh, is this a limited edition item? I got that for my birthday the other day. Give it to me. Were you listening to me? Of course I was. But it doesn't matter to me. I'm your sister, so it's fine, right? Just get another one. Hey! Don't touch that. I tried to take the makeup Sophia had grabbed from her. But she resisted, and we both fell to the floor. At that moment, Richard came home. What are you doing? This is. Are you okay? Huh? Richard went straight to Sophia without even glancing at me. How did this happen? Sophia gave me a sly smile. I just wanted to look at Isabella's makeup, but she told me not to touch it. I just wanted to see it. What? What are you talking about? Did you really do that? No, Maybe she thought I was going to steal it. Did you really think that about Sophia? Richard didn't listen to me and believed Sophia instead. In the end, the makeup Richard had given me as a gift ended up in Sophia's hands. And then I was sure. Richard and Sophia were much closer than I had thought. I was blamed, and Sophia left with a triumphant look on her face. Don't ever do something like that again. But that was... I don't want to hear any excuses. No, really. It doesn't matter. Huh? Just get along with Sophia, okay? Richard took Sophia's side without even listening to me. And then, an incident triggered my desire for revenge against Richard and Sophia. Our marriage deteriorated because of Sophia. We barely talked anymore, and the only thing that kept me going was Emily. Even at her young age, Emily seemed to worry about me and would stay by my side even when she had nothing specific to do. Mom, are you okay? Thank you, I'm fine. Good. But even Emily started to talk less. Sometimes she wouldn't even respond when I called out to her. And then I realized. Before Emily started acting distant, Sophia had been coming over. She might have said something unnecessary to Emily. That suspicion never went away. Years passed. I'm home. When I came home, there were unfamiliar shoes in the entrance. They were quite small, seemingly a child's shoes. They weren't Emily's. I had a bad feeling and rushed into the house. Welcome back. Huh? Who's that kid? A new member of our family. What are you talking about? For a moment, my mind went blank and I felt dizzy. Hey, are you okay? Yeah. Can you explain what's going on? We adopted a new child. Why did you do that without telling me? Hey, don't raise your voice. I was overwhelmed by feelings that words couldn't describe. I couldn't understand why he had done this. Why? Well, I thought Emily might be lonely on her own. And Emily seems happy about it too. Richard answered with a smile. But now that the child was here, we couldn't send them back. And so, our life began with mixed feelings. That alone would have been fine, but 2 years later, something else happened. By this time, I was already 40 years old. No way! After visiting my parents' home for the first time in a while and coming back, there was another unfamiliar child. Is that child also adopted? Yes, you're right. It was the third one. Just when we were getting used to living as a family of 4. Another addition to our family. While it sounds like a happy thing, the circumstances were not normal. Moreover, Richard was pleased with himself, thinking he was doing a good thing. Let's get along from now on. Thus, our new life with 5 people began. Watching the 3 daughters, they seemed like real sisters. Their faces even looked somewhat similar. This realization hit me again when Sophia visited. Long time no see, Isabella. Yes, indeed. I braced myself. Whenever she came over, it was usually to ask for something. But this time was different. Instead of asking me for something, she actively engaged with the girls. Her usual high-handed attitude was replaced with eyes full of affection. Oh, I see. I realized the source of the strange feeling I'd been having about the 3 daughters. They looked like Sophia. Their eyes and features were strikingly similar. What's wrong? When I look at the girls, they remind me of Sophia. Looking at them like this, they seem more like her children than yours. Richard showed a surprised expression, but he covered it up by making a snide remark to me. I just thought so when you mentioned it. Do you have a problem with that? Not really. Richard's reaction stayed in my mind. And Sophia started coming over every week, taking care of the girls in my place. 3 more years passed, and I was 43. As usual, Sophia was visiting and chatting with the girls. They all touched their earlobes. Huh? I noticed they all have the same habit. Really? Isn't that normal? Here, a thought crossed my mind. It wouldn't be strange if the children were Sophia's. A few days later, I couldn't stop thinking about it, as if I were under a curse. To resolve this, I decided to take action without telling anyone. What are you doing over there? Oh, just cleaning. Over there? Yeah. Well, okay, but hurry up and make dinner. Yeah. I was looking for my daughter's hair. It was absolutely necessary. No one should notice. And I also needed to get Sophia's hair. I had never wanted Sophia to come over as much as I did now. Welcome. Sophia came over the next weekend. You're in a good mood, aren't you? Really? I feel the same as usual. I managed to get Sophia's hair as well. It was the time I thought I was ready. Just to be sure, I decided to get Richard's hair too. Then I sent them to a research agency. The cost wasn't cheap, but this time it couldn't be helped. The results arrived after a month. Sophia came over looking different than usual. I have Richard's child. What? So please get a divorce and leave. What are you saying out of the blue? Please. I was shocked that she was pregnant, but I never expected her to ask for a divorce. But if she thought I knew nothing, she was gravely mistaken. At this point, an idea struck me. If you want the divorce so badly, I have conditions. Conditions? They can't be that bad, so fine. Really? I provoked Sophia. Sophia, not one to back down, acted confidently. This was exactly what I intended. There's no way I'll do that. But Sophia didn't understand. This condition would be something she would carry for the rest of her life. I took a deep breath, looked Sophia straight in the eye, and said, "Divorce is fine, but in return, take care of the 3 daughters we've raised." I don't understand. Why would I? They're your children. Technically, they aren't biologically mine. Well, they're adopted. That's not what I mean. The truth is, the 3 children are. Just then, Richard came home from work. I'm home. What's going on? Richard's reaction made me think how deceitful he was. Sophia says she's pregnant with your child. Oh, do you realize what you've done? Well, Richard was visibly shaken. From his reaction, it seemed he didn't know Sophia was pregnant. Did you not know? I just found out now. I didn't know she was pregnant. Really? But whether Richard knew or not didn't matter to me. That wasn't the important part. So, about the 3 children, I know the truth. If you're going to say something, now is the time. I looked back and forth between Richard and Sophia. What do you know? Richard seemed to understand what I was about to say. Wait a minute. No need to wait, right? I'll just say it. The true parent of these 3 children is? Huh? I don't know. I wasn't told. Is that so? But that's a lie, isn't it? The real parent of the children is you, isn't it? I pointed at Sophia. What do they think raising these 3 daughters has been like? Given the circumstances, Sophia would have to atone for her actions, including what she had done so far. My heart was filled with more hatred than I had ever felt before. Don't say random things. Then, how about I show you some proof? Show me. And so, Sophia took a step into hell. Wait a minute. I brought out something I had kept in the bedroom drawer. I showed it to both of them. I had ordered a DNA test for the children and Sophia a while ago. The results showed that they were parent and child. How about this? There's no way you can talk your way out of this. That's... Sophia tried to make excuses even after seeing the evidence. But once it was scientifically proven, there was no escape for her. How could you think of something like this? Were you willing to give up your own daughters just to spite me? Then Sophia began to speak about what she had been holding in her heart all this time. Of course. From a young age, Isabella was always the one getting praised, while I was constantly called a failure. Indeed, Sophia was right. But that was only the opinion of shallow-minded adults who couldn't see beyond the surface. In reality, our parents never said anything like that. That was from unrelated people. Our family never said such things, not even once. That's a lie. Sophia seemed to recall something. When I was graduating from high school, Sophia had expressed a desire to go to college. A few years before that, I was also thinking about going to college. But financially, only one of us could afford to go. Our parents decided to prioritize me since I was the older sibling. Did you remember? I chose to get a job instead of going to college. But why would you do that? Because I knew you could do it if you tried. Your behavior got a bit out of hand because of the people around you. Sophia was capable, she just didn't apply herself. So, I did all this out of misguided resentment. That can't be. You were just running wild and misunderstood everything. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? Even if I told you the truth, you wouldn't have believed it. Sophia, losing her earlier confidence, fell silent. She probably didn't want to admit that everything she had done was due to a misunderstanding. That realization had led her astray. With Sophia already defeated, I needed to talk to Richard. Now it's your turn. I didn't know, so it has nothing to do with me. Richard tried to leave, but I grabbed his arm to stop him. Are you trying to run away? That's not it. Then sit down and listen. I made Richard sit on the sofa and continued. About the children, you're their father, aren't you? What? How did you come to that conclusion? You saw the exchange earlier, right? I got curious and had your hair tested. The results were as I expected. Huh? Did you think I wouldn't find out? Too bad. You might fool others, but it's too early to think you could fool me. Since Richard brought the children into our home, his behavior had been strange. More importantly, Sophia looked at the children with a mother's gaze. Even if I assumed all the children Sophia brought in were her own daughters, it was too much of a coincidence. I suspected Richard had some involvement, but I never thought he was the father. Do you have anything to say? Nothing, right? What do you plan to do now? Just as Sophia said, I'll divorce you. It's a clear case of infidelity, but I don't need any settlement money. I see. In exchange, you'll take full custody of the children. All of them? All three? Yes, all three. Are you okay with that? I always tried to raise them as if they were my real daughters. Even though they sometimes ignored me, they were still my precious girls. But my mind was made up. Of course, I feel lonely, but it's better for them to live with their real parents. They'll be happier. I had vowed to take revenge, so I couldn't do things halfway. The anger from being deceived for years couldn't be erased easily. Besides, I already have the divorce papers ready. Just for times like this. It was unexpected when Sophia told me she was pregnant, but I saw it as a chance. Are you serious? I'm serious. So hurry up and sign here, will you? And, of course, you don't have the option not to sign. So I made Richard sign the papers right then and there. I wanted to get the divorce papers and leave as soon as possible. Well, I'll make sure these get submitted. Are you leaving? Don't ask the obvious. I can't stay here anymore. You two can do whatever you like now. Just then, Sophia, who had been in despair moments before, spoke up. Isabella, wait a minute. I'm sorry for everything. I sighed. This is what you wanted, isn't it? I'm not involved anymore. No way. Isn't it? After giving up the kids, now you want to be with Richard? That's too convenient. Don't worry, they're all your daughters now. Sophia had gone so far as to put their own children in a facility just to trouble me. That's something no parent should do. She would face the consequences. I left the house with those words. It was raining outside, but my heart felt clear. After leaving, I headed to my parents' home. We hadn't been in touch much, but this time I had no choice. When I explained the situation, even my parents sighed. So, what are you going to do now? For now, I'll move somewhere. And I need to find a job. How about I ask Dad? I think he mentioned someone looking for help. Really? That would be great. All right, let's talk when he gets home. After that, I spent peaceful days at my parents' home. 3 days later, Richard contacted me. I was expecting it. Hey, help me out. What? It's been a mess since you irresponsibly left. What are you talking about? Those kids are yours, so deal with it. They haven't warmed up to me since you left. Sophia is with you, right? Yeah, but... I couldn't tolerate his selfish behavior any longer. Figure it out yourselves. Don't call me again. I hung up and went to see my lawyer before submitting the divorce papers. I initially told Richard the first wouldn't ask for a settlement, but I decided to make him understand my position. After all, he deceived me and then had the nerve to complain, so I wouldn't hold back anymore. Then, I got a call from Sophia. The police came by the other day. I don't know anything about that. It must have been you. Well, you deserved it. Putting your own daughters in a facility was a stupid thing to do. The future awaiting Sophia was unimaginable. Thus, I began living alone. I got a job through Dad's introduction, and everything has just begun. I was alone, but filled with hope. After quitting his job post-marriage, Brian, who now only works a part-time job 3 days a week, keeps dumping household chores on me, despite my full-time job. To add insult to injury, he's stingy with living expenses and started ignoring me when I confronted him about using my credit card without permission. Hey, I'm at my limit. I complained after dinner one day, but Brian didn't even look at me and went upstairs to his study. Determined to talk it out, I was halfway up the stairs when I heard Brian's voice. He seemed to be on the phone with his mother, Zoe. Mom? Lily is still acting all high and mighty. I'm fed up, so why not introduce me to some cute girl? It's fine, she's totally into me. She won't complain even if she finds out. I felt like my breath had stopped. How much does this man look down on me? Asking his own mom to set him up with someone else, unforgivable. I bit my lip and whispered to myself, just you wait. I'll make you regret ever taking my feelings for granted. I'm Lily, a 34-year-old housewife. I work as a regular employee at a major company. 7 years ago, I met Brian when he joined the company right after graduating from college, and we became close as we worked on the same team. His slightly needy side was cute to me, and I was happy he relied on me, being older. After we started dating, I accepted Brian's proposal and we got married. Brian lost his dad in his teens, but I never got the impression he was a mama's boy, and we only saw Zoe at Christmas. Zoe lived a bit far away and never just dropped by, so Brian and I were having a peaceful married life. However, Brian's actions suddenly cast a shadow over everything. We can live on your salary alone, right? One day, Brian suddenly broached the subject after coming home from work. Excuse me? I quit my job today. I was shocked by Brian's nonchalant declaration. Without showing any remorse, Brian continued with a smile. From tomorrow, it's all on you to work hard, Lily. Oh, and I'm counting on you for the housework too. I'll help out a bit. I was speechless. Wait a minute. You're telling me this after the fact? Yeah. It's my decision to make. Brian had been working in a different department for a while. He didn't seem to be struggling with his job, but maybe he was stressed? Still, he could have at least consulted me before quitting. Trying not to show my disappointment, I asked, "So, you're becoming a house husband?" I don't want to do housework all day. Then how about looking for a part-time job? I want you to contribute to our finances. All right, I'll give you money for groceries and utilities. You take care of the rest of the payments. And I'd like an allowance of $1,000. $1,000? I exclaimed in surprise, to which Brian nonchalantly replied, "It's cheaper than hiring a housekeeper." His words bothered me. He must be planning to work within my tax allowance. I've never heard of someone working part-time, earning less than $10,000 a year, and getting a $1,000 monthly allowance. But I didn't want to argue, so I reluctantly agreed. Brian, with his charming smile, was very popular. Even when we got married. Why would he marry someone older? There are plenty of prettier women out there. Female colleagues were jealous. Brian must have been facing troubles I didn't know about. If job stress could make him sick, then changing jobs was the better option. I was willing to work more for that. Since he lived at home until we got married, it was understandable he wasn't good at housework. I hoped he would get better with time. But my hopes were quickly dashed. At first, he would rinse the dishes and put them in the dishwasher, even vacuum the house, but after 6 months, Brian completely stopped doing any housework. For instance, one day, after an early morning start and overtime, I came home tired to find breakfast dishes still in the sink, and a pot that only needed reheating was left in the fridge. Sorry, I've been busy too. You know, looking for a better part-time job. Brian made an excuse while lounging on the sofa. The laundry was also wrinkled, left in the washing machine. Brian, who works a 3-hour part-time job 3 times a week, was off today. I'm busy right now, Lily, can you make it? I reluctantly asked Brian as I put the pot on the stove. Just like I said before, work is really hectic for me right now. So, I'd really appreciate it if you could take on a bit more of the household chores. Leaving for work at 6 a.m. and getting back at 8 p.m. doesn't leave much time for anything else. Then Brian frowned unpleasantly. I do take out the trash and clean my own room. And I bring in the laundry when it starts to rain. Yeah, and that helps. But preparing meals alone takes up all my time. I even make your lunch. Don't get all high and mighty over that. I stared at Brian with wide eyes. Brian twisted his face and spat out irritably. Just because you earn a little, you're acting all superior. That's disgusting. You only got to be an assistant manager and earn more than me because of everyone else's support. Don't you understand that? Leaving me speechless, Brian went upstairs with his mobile phone in hand and slammed the door of his study. Since then, Brian's selfish behavior became even more apparent. If I used the dryer because I couldn't rely on Brian, he would complain later. I was planning to hang the laundry properly. You don't trust me, do you, Lily? On another sunny day, trusting Brian and not using the dryer, I came home to find the laundry still in the washing machine. During such a weekend, while Brian was out, Zoe suddenly showed up. It takes an hour and a half by car from the in-laws' house, so we only visit together at Christmas. I remember being scolded by Zoe when Brian left the room during our pre-marriage meeting. Marrying a woman 4 years older? Brian could have anyone he wanted, why choose you? Knowing that Zoe didn't like me, I wished she would leave soon but still offered her slippers. Then, standing at the entrance, Zoe snapped at me. What do you think you're doing, making Brian do all the work? Excuse me? Making Brian do the housework, you're a terrible wife. I knew we shouldn't have let him marry you. I retorted, albeit confused. With all due respect, I work full-time too, so we're sharing the chores. Though recently, Brian hardly does anything. Zoe's eyes widened, and she yelled at me. Of course you do, you're the woman. Listen, Brian is delicate and fragile. If he collapses because of you, I'll sue you. Yelling one-sidedly, Zoe left. When Brian came back from shopping and I told him about Zoe's visit. Aha. He replied indifferently. I wish you wouldn't discuss our private matters with Mom. I wanted to argue, but it felt like complaining, so I ended up not saying anything to Brian. I'm tired today. I'm busy too. Brian started using excuses like these to dump all the household chores on me and then caused an even bigger problem. When I tried to use my credit card at the grocery store on the way home from work, the payment was inexplicably declined. Shocked, I checked the app and found the card maxed out with charges I didn't recognize. Thinking it was a mistake, I contacted the credit card company and found out Brian had racked up nearly $10,000 in game charges and brand clothing purchases. He remembered the PIN I gave him when we bought an appliance and used it without permission. I couldn't overlook this and confronted Brian as soon as I got home. Why are you using my credit card without asking? You have your own, don't you? $1,000 a month isn't nearly enough. Then maybe you should work more? It's a waste to spend all your time playing games at home. Brian glared at me with a terrifying look. I braced for yelling, but he just clicked his tongue and left the living room. His footsteps were heavy as he went upstairs, slammed the door to his study, and didn't come out for the rest of the evening. And from the next morning, he started ignoring me. Good morning. I'm off. No matter what I said, Brian would not even glance at me, sitting on the sofa and fiddling with his mobile phone. When I rushed to make and serve dinner, he would eat while laughing at videos on his phone, leaving his dirty dishes on the table before going to take a shower. And so, Brian would not make eye contact with me, ignoring any attempt at conversation. Of course, he never initiated any conversation with me either, acting as if I had suddenly become invisible. I had a plan I wanted to discuss, but under these circumstances, I couldn't bring it up. Then came the payday for Brian's part-time job. As usual, I put the $1,000 allowance in an envelope and handed it to him. Brian snatched it away and started to leave. Hey, can you give me the $700 for groceries and utilities? I called out to his back, but he went upstairs as if he hadn't heard me at all. I felt like holding my head in despair. With the rent, utilities, taxes for both of us, insurance, and communication costs all on me, life gets pretty tough without that $700. But since Brian seemed unwilling to give it, I reluctantly paid it out of my own savings and allowance. As the days of being ignored by Brian continued, I found myself overwhelmed with a heavy mood all day long. By evening, I'd be engulfed in gloom, seriously not wanting to go home. I'd kill time in restaurants or grocery stores after work, even staying in business hotels. But in the end, running away from the problem solved nothing. If Brian's mood improved, we might not be lovey-dovey, but at least we could have normal conversations. Maybe when I get home today, he'll respond as if nothing happened. Though it didn't happen tonight, maybe when we wake up, he'll say, "Good morning," with a smile. Holding on to that hope, I was ignored for 3 months, until my body reached its limit. I could hardly eat, losing 8 pounds. Brian just laughed and scrolled through his phone, leaving his finished plate on the table and moving to the sofa, seemingly oblivious to me eating oatmeal with a pale face. I put down my spoon, stood up, and went to Brian with a voice so faint it might disappear. "Hey, I'm at my limit." Brian seemed annoyed by me, stood up from the sofa, and went upstairs to his study. I slowly rinsed the dishes, loaded the dishwasher, wiped my hands, turned it on, and left the kitchen. This isn't right. I need to talk to Brian. Tomorrow's my day off, so it's a good chance to talk without worrying about time. Halfway up the stairs, I heard Brian's elated voice. He seemed to be on the phone with Zoe. "Mom, Lily is still acting all high and mighty. I'm so fed up. Can you introduce me to someone cute? It's okay, she's totally into me. She won't complain even if she finds out." My breath almost stopped. How much does this man look down on me? Asking his own mom to set him up with someone else, unforgivable. I bit my lip and muttered in my heart, "Just you wait. I'll make you regret trampling on my feelings." My feelings for Brian cooled instantly, and I put into action a plan I had been considering for a while. I waited until Brian was asleep, took only my ID, and left the house. I stayed in a hotel that night, and in the morning, I contacted a real estate agent saying, "I want to move in earlier." They agreed readily. After sorting out the gas, electricity, and water, I returned home while Brian was at his part-time job, and had the movers take my things to the new place. The apartment we lived in was a new designer apartment costing $1,500 in rent alone. I would have been happy with a cheaper place, but Brian insisted. So, when Brian quit his full-time job, I started looking for a cheaper, used apartment. I had planned to discuss it with Brian, but since he started ignoring me, I went to viewings alone and prepared to move as soon as his mood improved. But after hearing yesterday's conversation, I had no intention of telling Brian or Zoe where I moved. I decided to divorce and live on my own. Brian initially ignored the fact that I had left the house and didn't contact me at all. But after a month, he started calling my mobile phone incessantly, day and night. My message inbox was filled with Brian's desperate messages. "Lily, where are you? It's terrible to just leave like that. I got a notice that the rent couldn't be withdrawn. It's supposed to come out of our account, right? Did you forget to deposit? Deposit the money immediately. I'm getting reminders for the utilities, mobile phone bills, and even from the car insurance company. Put some money in, quickly. By the way, where's my $1,000 allowance?" It's your choice to leave, but it's a problem if you don't pay for things. It's common sense for the one with money to pay, right? How am I supposed to live on $800 a month? Don't ignore me. Brian was the one who ignored me first. I was just doing the same thing he did, but why is he so angry? And yet, no apology, just selfish demands. While I was dumbfounded reading the messages, Zoe called. I didn't want to answer, but ignoring her would only cause more trouble, so I reluctantly pressed the talk button. "Hello?" "Seriously, Lily. Running away from home and leaving Brian behind, what are you thinking? Acting on your own despite being his wife. Come back right now." I sighed and calmly retorted, "I'm not going back to that house." "Huh? You plan to abandon your duties as a wife? Who's going to take care of Brian? Brian is 30, not a toddler. He can take care of himself. If you're so concerned, maybe you should move in and take care of him." My word. The one who really acted selfishly was him. I explained with restrained anger and in a calm voice. He quit his job to work part-time 3 days a week. His salary dropped, and even though I only asked for help with groceries and utilities, I couldn't even get that. Then he started using my credit card without permission, and when I confronted him, he began ignoring me. That's why I left. Zoe fell silent all of a sudden. After a while, she muttered, confused. Wait, he quit his job? The major company he was so proud to get into to please his mom? Yes. He quit suddenly one day without any discussion, saying we could live on my salary alone. Sure, I earn a decent wage because I'm his supervisor. But it was shocking when he quit out of the blue. Well, I suppose. Zoe sounded baffled. So, for the past year, Brian has been living off my salary. And he wouldn't even do the household chores. If you don't believe me, I can forward you the messages from Brian. It seemed Zoe had no idea Brian had quit his job. When I sent Zoe the message Brian had recently sent me, she explained in a soft voice. Brian has been consulting with me frequently. What about? Well, he said he's working hard, even doing overtime and working on holidays, but you hardly work because you're tired and neglects the housework. He said that you're living off his salary, yet you act all high and mighty, and that he's fed up and wants to have fun with a cute girl to relieve stress. That's what he told me. That's the complete opposite of the truth. I was utterly dismayed by Brian's lies, even to Zoe. How much more can he disrespect his life? He probably thinks Zoe will scold him and then he'll just come back home. First off, I've never heard of a mom looking for affair partners for her son. What are you thinking, Zoe? I pressed Zoe with a stern tone, and she started making excuses. Well, he says married life is tough, and he's venting. If he gets sick from stress, it'd be terrible. If matching him with a young girl makes him happy, it's a small price to pay. I couldn't get any living expenses, and after being ignored for 3 months, I was the one who nearly got sick. Besides, that's disrespectful to any woman you introduce him to. Well, handsome Brian is popular, so even though he's married, there are surely women who'd want to date him. Well, if he were still working at that company, that is. That's not the problem, I thought bitterly. It's no wonder talking to Zoe was getting nowhere, like mother, like son. It seems divorce is the only option. Divorce? It doesn't have to come to that. He's probably regretting it by now. Zoe suddenly started panicking. She cares most about appearances. She must want to avoid her successful, good-looking son getting divorced at all costs. I made it clear. Regretting? How? I'm not his ATM. It's best if he divorces me, then he can play around and spend money however he likes. That's... Lily, can't you reconsider? He needs you. Zoe pleaded, but I coldly informed her. Brian seems likely to drag out the divorce, so I'll be hiring a lawyer. Please direct any further communication through them. I'll be seeking compensation for the ignored period and the unpaid living expenses, as well as the unauthorized credit card charges. Can Brian even afford to pay that? Zoe muttered as if it were someone else's problem. If the son can't pay, then the parents will have to. What? That's why I'm asking you to let Brian know I want a divorce. I'm counting on you. Lily, please, reconsider. I hung up without listening to the rest of Zoe's plea. The next day, I called a lawyer to discuss the divorce, secured an appointment for consultation, and felt a bit relieved. While enjoying a week of paid leave in my new place and unpacking, my mobile phone signaled a message. I wanted to block Brian and Zoe's contacts, but until the divorce was finalized, there might be a need to communicate. So, I left their contacts unblocked, without setting them to reject calls. I realized it was a mistakenly sent message. It appeared Zoe, not adept with mobile phones, had accidentally posted in the family group chat thinking it was a message to Brian personally. I decided to read it as well since it was shared. Brian, this isn't what we talked about. I was humiliated. What's wrong? You quit your job to work part-time 3 days a week? There was a pause. Did you hear that from Lily? Yes. Living off Lily's salary? It's shameful for a man to earn less than a woman. Mom, don't say such outdated things. That's why I kept it a secret. Brian quickly retorts. Well, nowadays there's something called a house husband, so if you were working properly, that would be fine. But working only 3 days without doing any housework and still acting all high and mighty? Anyone would want a divorce, not just Lily. Surprisingly, Zoe was on my side, likely disappointed in Brian. Stop pestering me. I won't divorce. She's in love with me and will come back regretting it soon. I couldn't help but scoff. I was stunned. Still saying such things. Where does his confidence that his wife wouldn't despise him no matter how badly he treated her come from? What happened to introducing me to a young and cute girl? That's off the table. Why? I was looking forward to it. Do you even understand your situation? No girl wants to get close to a 30-year-old man living off his wife's salary and working part-time. I burst out laughing, imagining Zoe's exasperated face. Someone will be out there. You know I've always been popular, Mom. If you were still employed at a prestigious company and a university graduate, there might be girls willing to date you, hoping for more, even if it's an affair. But not the current you. Really? Brian's response was ever so nonchalant against Zoe's anger. You can still make it. Go back to working at a big company like before. No, it's bothersome. Living off Lily's salary and lazing around is much easier. Brian's carefree admission was appalling. That's not how it works. Lily is planning to divorce you and claim compensation, including the credit card charges. I don't have that kind of money. If a bill comes, you'll pay, right? You have Dad's inheritance. You'd be happy to use it for your beloved son, right? Then Zoe's replies stopped. Mom? Hey, we're not done talking. Respond, please. After a pause, the message resumed. Why aren't you picking up the phone? Don't ignore me. Zoe had blocked Brian. While pondering this, Brian called me. Ignoring it led to a voicemail message. He rambled on in several messages. Mom has disowned me. Lily, you wouldn't abandon me, would you? It's okay you left. Come back home. You're not serious about divorce, are you? You're just sulking, right? Fine, I'll agree to a divorce. I guess I was partly at fault. But I can't pay the compensation or the credit card charges. I just can't afford it. Anyway, keep paying the rent and taxes as usual. Your husband is in trouble. You earn enough to help out, right? And my allowance too. My astonishment surpassed anger. He probably still doesn't realize he's at fault. A few days later, Brian received a certified mail regarding the compensation and credit card repayment, and, finally understanding the situation and panicking, he sought legal advice. I love Lily. She's just upset thinking I dislike her. If she comes back now, I'll forgive her. Such nonsensical claims were made, but under legal advice, realizing I was serious, he turned pale. Despite his reluctance, the lawyer managed to settle the divorce after 6 months. Feeling refreshed, I blocked Brian and Zoe's contacts. Abandoned by Zoe, Brian was at a loss. Burdened with the $10,000 compensation, 3 months of unpaid living expenses, $10,000 for unauthorized credit card use, plus his own debts, of course he was. Brian, who had splurged on branded clothes using the allowance and my credit card, reluctantly sold his purchases for cash. Still short, he pleaded with the lawyer for a monthly payment arrangement. Procedures to seize his account if there was no payment were put in place. Unable to pay for the rent without my support, Brian moved to an older apartment. He had no choice but to increase his part-time hours to make ends meet. An ex-colleague who spotted Brian mentioned he was so emaciated, they hardly recognized him. I hope this serves as a wake-up call for him to discard his spoiled attitude and embrace independence. Freed from Brian, my earnings no longer drained by him, and liberated from the misery of being ignored, I've recovered fully. As a result of working with more motivation than ever before, I was promoted from assistant manager to manager, and with an increased salary, I'm living busy yet fulfilling days. I aim to balance work and personal life for a meaningful life.